broadcasting live from our studio in Appleton, Wisconsin. You're tuned into Fox Cities Core on WCZR Code Zero Radio. We're the show that gives you an opportunity to call in and be a part of the show. Our call-in line is 920-358-0795. Core. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Fox Cities Core on WCZR Code Zero Radio. If this is your first time tuning in, WCZR is an independent streaming rock station based out of Appleton, Wisconsin. We play a lot of local music from the area, lots of music from beyond, and give us 20 minutes. You might like what you hear.
From beyond the grave or beyond the area?
Now people are like, I know that voice, and then you jump.
Hey, you opened it up, man. There was a joke there.
Well, let me introduce our next guest. Our next guest is a staple of the Wisconsin media scene. I say media because now it's
everywhere, right?
Wider than it used to be. And if you're like me, if you spent decades listening to him on the Razor and WAPL, he also is the host and producer of Cutter's RockCast. I'd like to welcome Cutter to Fox Cities Core. How are you doing?
Thank you, man. I'm much appreciated. Yeah, Cutter's RockCast is a podcast, the syndicated radio show, Cutting Edge Countdown, and then WAPL Mornings with Orly and Cutter. See, I'll get it all out for you. It's all good.
How do you keep all this stuff straight? 'Cause, I mean, you're.
It's a great question.
Because you are
Google Calendar.
Google Calendar. Because you've got a lot of different irons in the fire, and you've got a lot of different things that you are doing.
Yeah.
It just seems like a Google Calendar. Yeah, it's something like that would be useful.
Yeah, it has to be. You should. I gave my wife access to my work calendar, so that I'm like, hey, I have appointments or I have interviews scheduled or whatever it may be, and she had a heart attack. I had to like get out the paddles and be like, no, it's okay. I got it all figured out. It's fine.
Well, and congratulations, by the way. I know it was not like super recent, but recently you got married.
A year ago this month.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting. And how did that change your workflow as far as the busyness?
She has helped me with the work-life balance thing a lot. Listen, man, you know me, right? Like playing music, doing radio, all that stuff. I didn't sleep a lot, and really work sort of controlled my life. She has helped me sort of balance that out a little bit better and understand hey, it's okay to be home. And it's okay to just chill for a minute and not go do stuff and, just enjoy being around or even being by yourself.
Let's talk about how you got started in the radio business, because I find the story interesting. You were working at, I believe, at Chuck E. Cheese or a place like that, and somebody heard your voice. Is that story true? I don't know what is.
I don't even know how you heard that story, but yeah, kinda. So when I was 16, I got a high school job, and that job was Chuck E. Cheese in Green Bay, Wisconsin, in the shadow of Lambeau Field. And I used to announce the like, pizza's ready, because the waitresses never wanted to do that. And I worked in the game room. So I was, 16. I'm like, here, kid, have a token, and here's some tickets. So get out of my face. And they never wanted to do that. Well, I, at the time, played in a punk rock band where I also was the lead singer. Horrible decision by the band to let me be the lead singer, but I was. So I had no issue being on the microphone, So I just go over there and be like, yeah, ticket so-and-so, your pizza's ready. Ticket so-and-so, your pizza's ready. Whatever, it gave me something else to do. And one of the kitchen ladies was like, hey, you have a really good voice. You ever think about doing radio as a career? And this is the 90s yet, so radio was still a lucrative career option, Maybe not so much these days, but back then, I'm like, oh, wait, so I could go on the radio, I could talk, and I could still play music. Okay. And that was it. And I went into it. I went to Madison Media Institute and then got a job at WAPL doing overnights on the weekends and went up from there.
So how long were you at the Madison Media Institute then? That was like a 2-year program?
It was a 1-year program. I was going to go for 2 years, but it didn't work out that way because I had a child. So I came back. But so I went for 1 year, and it was a great experience. The school's gone now, but it allowed me to learn and get a job at APL, the station I grew up listening to.
And that was during the late 90s?
Yeah, 99. '99 is when I started at APL, June of '99.
I feel that was a good time in Madison. I know the music scene in Madison is always changing, but the late 90s, 99, you still had Garbage was still fairly fresh, the band Garbage at the time. You had that Smart Studios thing with that whole vibe down there. When you were going to the Madison Media Institute, were you still playing in your punk band at that point?
I was playing in a band out of Madison. We called it Inner Seal. We weren't great. Maybe we were. I don't remember. It was Madison in the late 90s. And if you were in Madison in the late 90s, you would know why you don't remember. Harvest Fest. I'll just leave it at that. But the scene was awesome. The scene was so cool. I remember playing with bands. It'd be like, oh, this band. Des Moines was the other big one because Madison and Des Moines bands would swap shows. And of course, in Madison, you had Garbage was the big deal, right? You just said it. But in Des Moines, it was Slipknot. So it was like, oh, and then everybody had that piccolo snare, and it's like this band sounds like 311, and this band sounds like Incubus, and this band sounds like Slipknot, and this band sounds like Garbage. It was such a cool time frame because all those different music genres that we consider different genres now was all the same. So at one show at Illusions in Madison, you could have, or High Noon Saloon or wherever, you could have, one band that was just an all out screamy, in your face, balls to the wall, mosh pit all day metal band next to a female fronted, no doubt sounding ska band. And it all worked. And it was awesome. It was my favorite time frame in music because of that, And Madison was a great scene for all that.
When you were going to the Madison Media Institute, were you living in an apartment or renting a house at that point?
I was living in an apartment. 2 people I graduated high school with in Denmark.
And did you meet a lot of people at the institute that you are still friends with to this day? Because that's all people that are interested in.
A couple. There's another woman who went into radio. She does mornings on JJO in Madison. Her name's Dee. She was awesome. I used to stay at her house when I'd come back to Madison and hang out. And she does mornings, she stuck it out in radio. There's another girl, I'll keep her name off, but I haven't talked to her now in a few years. But her and I think husband now, had moved to Colorado and were doing like bike tours and stuff. So nothing other than the fact that they knew how to do, maybe some social media stuff, but, nothing in media. But that's really it as far as people that I kind of stayed in contact with.
And you ended up moving back to the Fox Cities area after you finished at the...
I did. Yeah, I did.
Was that a hard choice not to stay down there? Because spending a year down there, I imagine you made new friends down there. And
and I had aspirations. I had dreams that I lost. Thank you for the coffee, by the way. Shout out to the Lately local Fox Valley band. You've had them on, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to stay for another year and do the music program. So the thing about Madison Media Institute back in those days was you had a broadcast program, which was radio or TV, your choice. And I obviously went to radio. That's where my face is for. But they also had the music program where you could learn how to run an actual recording studio. And that obviously was enticing to me as a musician. But I didn't end up doing it because I had a kid. My high school sweetheart, right when I left and moved to Madison, she told me she was pregnant. So, and that's okay. It ended up being a godsend in the end. My oldest son is an incredible human. I mean, absolutely incredible human being. Incredible human being, and the world is lucky to have him. I don't know how that happened, how my offspring ended up becoming that awesome of a human, but it did happen. So, in retrospect, it's a good thing. And yeah, so I moved back. I moved back in with mom and dad, and worked a bunch of odd and ends jobs until I got full time in radio.
And the way you got into radio, you just ended up seeing there was an opening overnight at WAPL.
You know what? I didn't even see there was an opening. I called. Like I moved back. Like I graduated school from that 1-year program, moved back to the Fox Cities area, and shout out to Denmark, Wisconsin. And I moved back to Denmark, and I called APL. I grew up listening to it, right? So I just like on a whim, I called, and at that time everything was 24/7 yet. Everything was analog, basically. You had cart tapes for commercials. You had carts for liners and stuff like that. Everything was being played on CDs. So you needed somebody in the studio 24/7. So they're like, yeah, we need bodies. okay, you can, I went and interviewed for the job, and Madison Media Institute ended up helping me with that, just knowing that I went there, and they hired me to do overnights on the weekends, and yeah, quickly went up from there.
Is the person that interviewed you still at the
Yeah,
station?
yeah, his name's Ross Maxwell. He
Ross.
hired me. I'm the only hire he ever made. When I ended up calling, maybe it was a perfect storm, but I ended up calling and asking for that job. The then program director, Randy Hawk, had just left and went to Milwaukee. And so Ross was the assistant at the time. So he was the interim program director, the boss, right? So he didn't really have much decision making power necessarily, but knowing that we needed bodies, and I'm just this fresh nosed kid who's also from the area with a little knowledge on how radio works, he hired me. And then they got a new program director right after that. His name was Joe Calgaro. And I met Joe in the hallway. I'm 19 years old. I met Joe in the hallway, and I go, "Oh, are you the new part-timer?" He was my boss. So that was cool.
How did it feel to walk in to that studio for the first time after listening to it? Was it an overwhelming feeling?
It was pretty awesome. Not gonna lie, it was pretty awesome. You know, an old radio. Now the studio. I don't know if you've been in the new studio, but now the studio it's very sleek, right? It's very digital. It's very everything's sort of clean and where it needs to be. Back then, it was way more punk rock. It was there's just stacks of carts and CDs and vinyl yet everywhere, right? There's a couple posters on the wall, shoddily hung. There's probably a bong stuck up in the rafters. It was a different era. It was a different time frame. Now everything's so nice, but back then, so yeah, it was cool, man. And again, we grew up listening to that radio station. You and I are on the same age. Like that was the station. Back at that time, it still played new music. That's where you heard bands for the first time. That's where you got to experience things for the first time. Listening to my predecessors, Rick and Len in the morning, and Randy in the afternoon, and Roxanne at night, or Desiree, or Rick Blades, or whoever. Some of the old schools. Yeah, it was pretty cool walking into the first time. You're like, wow.
Did you start immediately overnights at that point?
Yeah. I went. My first weekend on the radio was I think it was Sunday morning at midnight. So Saturday night, Sunday morning at midnight. Ross had given me a radio name to use that I didn't like, so I went my first weekend.
What was that name?
Jeff Bradley. So there was this thought process. We're going super behind the scenes here, but there was a thought process back then where you needed to have two names. You had to have two names. You had to have a first name and a last name, and it had to be a radio name. So what I mean by radio name is something easy that rolls off the tongue, easy to remember, easy to go. So something that just rolls. So he said Jeff Bradley. I'm like, that is the stupidest name. And no offense to Jeff Bradley. There are plenty in the area. In fact, I went to high school with a Jeff Bradley. So I was in band with him. I can't go by that name. Like at that time, I'm 2 years removed from high school. Like I can't do that. So my first weekend on the radio, I went as Andy, which is my real first name. And the name Cutter had come up before. And then we found it in a nickname book. And I went, oh, actually, that's popped up before. That's interesting. My middle initial is C. I kind of enjoyed knives. I don't know why. It's just a thing. I'm a biker too. So whatever. I always have one on me. Not now, don't worry. But so I'm like, okay, that works. That name actually makes sense. Let's just go with that. So I had to go by Jeff Cutter the first year I was on the radio.
I don't know why the name Jeff.
I don't know why
it makes
the name
me laugh, but
the thing is, that's my brother's name too. Like that's my brother's first name. Like I can't, you know what I mean? It's really weird. I can't go by. Can you imagine? 25 years later, here we are, and you're calling me Jeff.
I mean, we could start something today if you want.
No, thank you. Somebody's gonna be a D and say that to me out loud now, but that's fine.
So when did Cutter stick? You went with it, and then ever since then you've.
Well, it's funny because a year later we launched Razor, and when that happened, it was like, hey, the station's named after me, man. I know I'm only 20 years old, but come on. So once I went there was no going back. I mean, the name Cutter was going to be there forever at that point, and it has, and it's worked out. I think it's been okay. I've created a whole brand around it at this point.
When people see you out on the street, they obviously don't call you Andy; they call you Cutter.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
it's
My landlord calls me Cutter.
I was thinking about like nicknames are an interesting thing. Cutter. When I look at you, I see Cutter, but I was thinking, getting ready for this interview, of the nicknames from high school. Like I
Yeah.
went to Stockbridge High School. We had people with
So you did the
nicknames.
small town one too as well. All
Yeah,
right.
we had nicknames. People that had nicknames: Giddy, Spermy, Finger, Left Nut. I mean, there was just like there's lots of different nicknames. It's just funny to think of like the names or why somebody gets a nickname. Like, why did somebody get the nickname Spermy or Left Nut?
I don't
know what I
want to
mean?
know why somebody got the nickname Spermy. Like, show up with a crusty sock to school. What happened? Do we really want to know that story? I don't want to know that story.
So you ended up at Razor. How long did you do the overnight show at WAPL?
Well, I was only on the weekends for a very short period of time. It kind of moved up fast, and
You couldn't have been upset to leave that Sunday night spot.
no. Well, then you had to stay and run like, we had syndicated programming on. Back then, it was like In the Studio was one with Redbeard. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
You're in the studio with Redbeard.
You guys said that they played Rockline Saturday night. I always listened. Or
Rockline,
was that Sunday
Monday
night?
nights. Monday nights.
Yeah, I was
was
tuning into
Rockline.
that every week.
Yeah, I just definitely do that too. Well, so basically, I went from the overnight weekends. There was an opening during the day to do phone screening for our AM talk station, WHBY. So I would do that in the morning with, back then, the good neighbor Kathy Keenan. Listen to her give her recipes on the air. And then in the afternoon, I would be on the afternoon show with Joe Calgaro. And that lasted for about a year. And then I went to full-time overnights during the week. And at the same time, we launched Razor. So I would stay and actually help out the morning show guy on Razor. I would go from being Cutter on WAPL overnights, do the third shift lunch whistle and all that, I'd be Cooter on the Razor morning show with a guy named Driver back in this is '01, '02. And then it was '02. I went to Razor full time doing afternoons and nights, and kind of the rest is history.
Got to jump back to when you're screening calls for Kathy Keene. How many times back then did you hear the recipe for Weed Killer?
Oh my God.
Because that's like, I mean, for 20, however many years she was on the air, I think it seems like she gave that recipe at least a dozen times a week.
Pretty
People
sure I gave that
calling
recipe to my mom.
Are you still in contact with Kathy Keene, or do you ever
I
see
would
her?
see her every so often. She'll stop by. Yeah, I mean, she is who she is. She's a legend in radio in Northeast Wisconsin.
I think like listening to the Apple and Razor and WHBY, you hear these voices on there, and just like to imagine that even after people leave the station, you guys all still hang out and talk and make jokes.
To an extent, I think it depends on the person. I've stayed in contact with a couple people that used to work for us, but not a whole lot. It's a little weird for me because as a musician, I got into radio for the music, not for radio. Where most people in radio got into radio for radio, not necessarily for music. I don't know if you kind of catch what I'm saying, but
Yeah.
it's like because they wanted to be a radio DJ. Most radio DJs could go to any format and succeed and be just fine. For me, it's like if you take me off rock radio, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I tried it for a while. To go back through the history real quick, I did afternoons on Razor. I went up to mornings on Razor. And then I was let go. It was a budget cut in '09, and I went to WIXX for a few years, and not by choice necessarily. It just is what happened. I went there and I did top 40 radio for a while, and it sucked. Not because that station's horrible or anything like that. And the person who runs that company, I owe a lot to. He gave me my first opportunity in syndicated radio. He's a great guy, good friend, but it just wasn't my thing. So when I was able to go back to Razor in 2012, it was like, this is me again. I feel like me. I feel whole. Where I just didn't feel like that on a different format of radio. You lost your mic,
I
sir.
like what you said about being in it for music because people might not realize that if you're hosting shows on whatever radio station, you're
Hmm.
doing a lot more. That's only a small fraction of what you do every day at the
Right.
station, right?
Very true. Well, for a long time, I was the music director or assistant program director, depending on the time frame, for Razor specifically, and then for APL. And that was a lot of choosing, what we're playing, but not just what we're playing, but how we're playing it. What songs get played more? How do we rotate that in and out so you don't get sick of the same song over and over again? Yeah, on APL, we're classic rock, or we don't call it classic rock anymore. It's just we're rock, you know what I mean? But it's the biggest rock songs of all time, of the 80s, 70s, 90s, early 2000s even. So, the trick is figuring out how much do you play Welcome to the Jungle and Back in Black versus All My Life by Foo Fighters. And then how do you switch them back and forth to make sure that you hear it, but you also don't get sick of it? That's the magic number that, like, and it just changes all the time, and it's fun. It's fun to sort of, it's like creating playlists all the time, but an ever changing playlist, but with the same type of music. So it's pretty cool. And then on Razor, on the flip side, we get to choose, obviously, what are the new songs? What do we think people want to hear? Obviously, you want to hear the new Shinedown, but do you also want to hear this band that nobody's ever heard of before? I'm going to take a flyer on it. Sleep Token. Now they're the biggest band in the world. It's pretty fun to be able to do all of that. I don't do that anymore, but that was my job for a long time.
Gotta ask you this: what is your definition of classic rock?
I've gone back and forth on this a lot. I don't think it's a time frame. It's a sound. The sound is guitars, bass, drums, high vocals, not necessarily screamy vocals, not necessarily super down-tuned guitars. I'm not talking Korn. I don't know if Korn's classic rock, even though they're old enough now to be. But I would say Foo Fighters sounded, and they are old enough to be as well, because they have that. It's a rock and roll sound. Creed is a classic rock band to me. But even newer bands like Greta Van Fleet or Dirty Honey, or bands that sort of sound Rival Sons, sort of bands that sound like that. To me, that's classic rock. That sounds like something. If that could have came out in 1975, you wouldn't have batted an eyelash. But it comes out in 2025, and you're also like, yeah, this still sounds really good. That's classic rock to me. So on APL now, especially on the morning show, I'll go that route. Absolutely, I'll go that route.
I love that because you're saying it's not so much a time frame, but it's more of a sound. So it's more of a genre in itself now.
Right. Yeah, and you can go like, what are the tried and trues? What's the tested sound? Sure. I mean, on APL, that's what we're going to do, right? We're going to play the tried and true. We're going to play the tested, the big songs. But at the same time, why not throw in something like that? Because it sounds good. It sounds right. To me, I don't know, Filter, Hey Man, Nice Shot, which came out 30 years ago, sounds just as good on APL now as it did on Razor 25 years ago. You know what I mean? Even though people might think, oh, that's weird, or Rob Zombie even. That's another great example. Dragula is or Living Dead Girl, two of the biggest rock songs in history. So we're going to play those songs. Do they sound a little out of place next to Foreigner? Not as much as you think. So it's fun to be able to, and it's ever changing, and it has to ever change. It's ever flowing. You always have to be moving up a little bit. It's 2025 now. Kurt Cobain died 31 years ago. It's insane, but
Yeah, it's nuts.
And
he said it's 2025 now, so he slipped on the year.
It's 2026 now.
That's going to happen for a while, I think.
Yeah, it really is. We're not like, we didn't do this a week ago. It really is 2026 right now. I just didn't think about it.
So how do you keep fresh? How do you keep going with the changes? Because you're mentioning how to serve up the music, but now people are serving themselves so much on Spotify. They're not really getting out of their comfort zone, if you will. They're listening to what they want when they want. How do you keep them tuning in and discovering new things?
I think it's a great question. It's a really good question. And one that I don't know that there's ever a correct answer for, because I think it's different for everybody. But I know on the morning show specifically, because that's my thing now. It's It's building it into content. So, for example, Mammoth just played at Epic Event Center in Green Bay 2 months ago. Not even. I guess it was a month ago now. Now, his band, Mammoth, all over New Rock Radio, so Razor, right? But it's Eddie Van Halen's kid. You know what I mean? There's a way to bring that back to what we do. So I went backstage in an interview. I love Wolfgang is one of the nicest human beings you'll ever meet in your life, which is crazy, right? Son of one of the biggest rock star in history, and just the nicest and most humble and a great band, such a good band. But he and the lead singer of Alter Bridge, Miles Kennedy, I sat down with both of them backstage. Video is available, cuttingedgecountdown.com. Find me anywhere on YouTube. This is Cutter Media or at Cutter Media anywhere on social media. I'm always good for a cheap plug, man. Anyway, you sat down and talked to him, and I was able to kind of ask him about recording at 5150 Studios and not necessarily being the son of Eddie Van Halen, because we've had that conversation. I'm going to do that. Let's talk about the music. Let's talk about what you're doing now. But able to apply that back on APL on the morning show allowed me to play a couple songs from his new record on the morning show on WAPL. And that's everything. If we can do that and super serve sort of a community that maybe you didn't know you wanted to hear this, but guess what? You probably do. And if you don't, that's fine. But let's at least give the opportunity to do that. And I think that's just how you do it. Like, let's get in this world of social media and this world of, give me everything now. Let's go behind the scenes more. Let's get into it a little bit, not just play a song and like, oh God, who is it? No, and I'm gonna have you on the air and let's have a quick conversation about what this is and who you are and why you do it. And maybe somebody else will like it. Maybe somebody who only has listened to Guns N' Roses and Foreigner for their whole lives will now like this. And that's awesome if that happens.
Are there any songs that you just can't stand and you wish you didn't have to play anymore? I took it there.
I'm just gonna drink my coffee. That's a tall order.
Probably depends on the day too, right?
Maybe. I don't know that there are any. I'm weird. Like, I'll listen to all kinds of different genres of music. I've always been that way. But my wife is Latin, so like I have fallen in love with Latin music over the last few years because now I understand it more. You know what I mean? So the point of that is I can listen to country, I can listen to hard rock, I can listen to death metal, I can listen to Bad Bunny, I can listen to whatever, and I'm cool with it, right? So to have a song that I just absolutely don't stand, I don't know. There is a song that we play, it's an APL staple. It's a Northeast Wisconsin staple, I'm not sure why. I think we're the only rock station that ever really played it, and that's Copperhead Road.
Yeah.
By Steve Earle. I don't know. And I've talked about it even on the air because I'm not going to hide that. I don't know that I'm a big fan of that song, but I also DJ'd at dance clubs, and I'd be playing music, and then all of a sudden I'd have to play that. It just, for whatever reason, people love it, and that's fine. Love the song. I just don't. It's fine. It's a fine song. He's a fine musician. I just don't personally dig that song. I guess that's the only one that I could think of off the top of my head that'd be like, oh, I'm changing the station if I hear that.
That's a good one. I have to ask you about when you landed the morning show at WAPL. I mean, that's like the prime spot. Of course, Rick and Len did that forever, and then you ended up having the opportunity to do it with Rick for a while, and then, of course, Laura.
Yep.
What was that feeling like?
Shout out to Laura Lee, by the way. She's awesome, and we lucked into having her, and she's been absolutely incredible as my co-host.
How long have the two of you been doing the show?
A year, just about. Well, no, not quite a year and a half, year and a quarter.
Has it only been that long? It seems like longer.
I know. I know. Tell me, I'm sure she feels that way.
And what was different when you were doing it with Rick versus Laura? Besides, obviously, Rick had been there forever at that point.
Well, it was it was interesting how it all went down. I love Len to death, and he unfortunately had to leave the radio station under circumstances that are out. I have no control over. Did not really even. I wasn't even really privy to the information about it, other than the fact that at the time, my job was co-programming the radio station. So at the time, I had to help figure out a solution to what we were doing on the morning show. After that all went down, I had no inclination that I was part of that solution. None. My boss didn't tell me. I didn't know that was a conversation that was happening behind the scenes. I was just trying to figure out in my head. I'm like, okay, we'll put Ross on with Rick. That's a good Band-Aid for now. And then we'll kind of figure out the future. We got to, I was trying to talk to Rick, like how long are you going to do this yet? All that, so that we know kind of what it is we're going to do. But eventually, my boss and I used to go to a dive bar and kind of figure out things behind the scenes. And him and I went to that dive bar. We got some steak bites. We got some, had a beverage. And he goes, "Hey, what do you think about doing the morning show?" I'm like, "On where?" I'm like, "We have free beer and hot wings on Razor. They're good. Like, they're really good. I'm not taking over for that. I don't want anything to do with that, I'm like, no, on APL. I'm like, "With Rick?" Because, yeah. I'm like, doesn't Ross make way more sense, And he talked me into it. He convinced me, and Rick and I had a long conversation about what that would look like, and the fact that he probably was going to give it another few years before he retired, and even maybe take it year by year and kind of see where we're at. Do the Brett Favre thing of I'm retiring, I'm not retiring, I'm retiring, I'm not retiring. Love you, Rick. And I don't know. I'm like, okay, I grew up listening to this guy. He's a genius writer. He's an anomaly. People like that don't exist in radio anymore, because he wasn't a great radio DJ per se, but he was a great writer, and he had a quick wit about him that you can't replicate. You can't,
Talking
Nobody
about just
can.
play music, that's a big part. It takes a long time to write stuff like that. You're doing a lot of that either in your cubicles at the office or at home.
Yeah,
You don't have somebody writing it for you.
Rick was dedicated to his craft almost to a fault. I'm not going to say it controlled his life, but he was always thinking about where's the next thing coming from, where's the next bit, where's the next joke, what's the next subject. And again, there aren't a lot of people that think like that, anymore, especially in our world. So, and he was in it for the long game. People are so like, give it to me now, give it to me now. Where's my clicks? Where's my all that? That wasn't Rick. And I learned a lot from that. He was very much an influential person as far as that is concerned. Of just slow down, wait for it, it'll be there. As far as timing and all of that. And Rick was awesome. I loved working with him. It was an honor to work with him. But when he got sick, unfortunately, a couple of years ago, and had to retire about a year earlier than he had intended, and that's okay. He's doing okay now. But he got out of radio and just focused on his health. And we hired Laura, and like I said, she's been amazing.
Do you remember your first time meeting her? The first meeting between the two of you?
Yeah, it's funny. So Laura, I talked before about how I did a lot of behind the scenes as far as programming goes. Laura did the same thing, but for other radio stations. Now, I didn't know her, but we have a ton of mutual friends, to the point where actually somebody who works for a management company who manages bands, that I won't say their name, Alcoholica, but she called and went, "You have to hire Laura." After she had applied, you have to hire Laura. She's going to be amazing. I'm like, I don't know her. It's like, how do you not know her? We've been at the same conferences. We've been at the same shows. We've been at the same, and for whatever reason, we never crossed paths. So the first time I met her is when we interviewed her, and she came off great, obviously. There were a couple people that we talked to that would have been equally as amazing, I'm sure. But there was something about Laura that just made sense. And it just felt like she was going to fit here,
And ever since, you guys have a good chemistry on the radio. How much of that is from hanging out outside of work, or are you getting all the chemistry just from your day-to-day coming in?
Day-to-day. It's more day-to-day. We don't hang out a lot outside of work. I mean, we do. It definitely has happened. Do we go, we've gone and gotten lunch. We've gone and gotten drinks, for sure. But, a lot of it is just on the air, talking about kind of, she's an experienced radio DJ. I'm an experienced radio DJ. How do we put those two together? How do we marry that and make that sound good on APL? And it took a minute. There's no doubt. We knew it would. But all of a sudden it just started clicking, and our timing, I know by body language, all of that, what she's going to do. Same with her, with me, for the most part. And we're not afraid to call each other out on our stuff either. There's a little brother sister aspect going on. Like I'm like her older brother, even though she's older than me.
I think that's one of the interesting things of your dynamic is hearing you guys barb each other.
Yeah.
It's entertaining.
Good.
We had a question here from Bob Minter. He asks, when does your day start and how much time do you have for show prep?
Not as much as I'd like, and way too damn early. I go in at 4:30, so I'm up at 3:30. I normally prep the night before a little, just as far as getting some ideas for the next morning. But really, we do a lot of stuff on the fly. And that's not necessarily by design. It just sort of worked out that way. But I think, information's moving so fast in the 21st century that it's hard to sort of pre-plan a lot. You know what I mean? I'll pre-plan certain things. We'll write Weenie of the Week that we do on Friday. We'll write Small Town Crime Wave. I'll put that together on Sunday. I work every Sunday, putting that together, getting some things together for the week. Do we have stories that we can use for games or, whatever that may be? I need to record some guitar riffs for Cutter's Guitar Shop or, things like that I'll do ahead of time. But a lot of the subject matter is sort of day to day. It's okay. We get in the morning at 4:30. We go on at 5, and we'll spend that first, 45 minutes on the air just sort of riffing and, talking about our days, different things that popped up. What national day is it? Because it's always stupid. And I'm like, we need stupid entertainment, I feel like right now. There's a little too much seriousness going on in the world. So why not make fun of the fact that it's National Lasagna Day? Where the hell am I going to get a good lasagna later today? It will do that. And then we'll get into it, and at that period of time during that process, and we'll play a couple rock songs obviously as well. We'll kind of figure out what we're doing the rest of the day.
And then what time do you typically finish? I mean, your show ends at
9:15. We're off the air. It goes till 9, but we always go over a little bit. We talk to Ross. He's sort of the unofficial third member of the show. He does middays obviously on WAPL, but he also fills in for me when I'm on vacation or out sick or, the kid's sick or something like that. He'll cover me, and he takes care of a lot of the stuff you hear in between the songs, in between, intros for bits and things like that. That's Ross. A lot of that's Ross, with a little direction from Laura and I. So we'll cross over and do that. Then I'll eat a little lunch, and then after that, what am I doing for web? What are we doing for social? Do I have a video I have to produce? Any videos that Laura and I are in, generally speaking, I will either write or record or edit, interviews, things like that. Plus, once I'm done with morning show stuff, then it's on to Cutting Edge Countdown stuff. I try to work on that, a little bit every day. Wednesdays and Thursdays a lot because it's a syndicated show that runs throughout the country on the weekend. So I have to have that actually done a day or two ahead of time. So it's a lot of that kind of stuff. So my day is generally done, I don't know, 12:30, 1. It just depends on the day. Sometimes I leave early, go let the dog out, and then I go back and then I sit down in my basement studio and work for a little bit. It just depends.
When you're getting a lot of people into the studio, I want to touch on Steve Keller. People might know him as a Traveling Snake Show.
Yeah, I love Steve. I loved Steve.
Passed away this last year, and you had him on the show quite a few times. How is it as far as relationships go? You're meeting people in the studio. How many guests do you stay in contact with?
Most of them, if possible. Steve was awesome because it was different, and him coming in always reminded me. And Carl, who took over the Traveling Snake Show, he will be doing the same thing this coming summer, I'm sure. But do you remember back in the day watching like the talk shows and they'd have like Jack Hanna on and, the animals would all come in and they'd mess with the hosts and all that stuff. That Steve reminded me of that time frame. You know what I mean? Of having the snakes in, and I'd have a snake crawling on me for the entire 30-minute segment. Because we'd always have them on for 2 segments, and it was a lot of fun to be able to continuously do that, and do that, once or twice a year. But as far as guests staying in touch with, I guess it depends on the guest. If it's a one-time thing, maybe we don't stay in touch. But if it's a every year thing, then maybe we do. It just depends. And Laura and I have really tried to hone in on community events and what makes sense for the people that listen to WAPL, or potentially the people that listen to WAPL. And what are the charity events that matter to us? What are the community organizations that matter to us? And I want to have those people on, as much as humanly possible.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Cutter's RockCast and some of the stuff removed from the station that you do on the side, because you do a lot of stuff, stuff that's not directly affiliated with your, can we say, day job?
Sure. What are you saying? I'm a stripper at night. Get rumors. This is how rumors start.
Stay tuned. We've got Cutter. You are watching Fox Cities Core on WCZR Code Zero Radio.
A few words about our sponsor. Pasquarello Auto Sales has been in business since July of 1983. That's 42 years of serving the surrounding community with quality pre-owned and fleet-owned vehicles and service you can trust. They've also been voted #1 best used car dealership in Oshkosh 4 years in a row. Well, that's more than a few words, so here's a few more. Pasquarello Auto Sales is a passionate supporter of the Fox Valley music community, and for that, we encourage you to support them. Your next vehicle purchase is important. Pasquarello Auto Sales is there for you every step of the way, from the showroom to your driveway. Find and like on Facebook or online, PasquarelloAutoSales.net. They're located at 3699 Jackson Street in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 6 p.m., Saturday, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., and closed on Sundays. Give them a call at 920-230-3030. Pasquarello Auto Sales of Oshkosh, where you're treated like family.
We are back. You are watching Fox Cities Core on WCZR Code Zero Radio. We are joined by Cutter from WAPL. He also does the Cutter's RockCast. You've been doing the RockCast for a long time. I think you are on episode 400 some at this point.
Something like that. It's on break right now. It'll be back next week. But yeah, so let me, I guess, quickly explain how that works. Cutter's RockCast is my podcast. I have started doing a video version of that too, which you can find on YouTube. But all it is it's long form interviews of me with rock stars or people within the music community, because I've also had producers on and people like that. And it's just the conversation. That's all. It's all it is. I mean, it's one of the 3 million podcasts that you can find on Apple or Spotify or wherever.
3 million might be an understatement.
It might be an understatement. I know, because my listenership has gone. Anyway, but that's actually an amendment to my syndicated radio show, Cutting Edge Countdown. So I'll have a guest for Cutter's RockCast, and I will use that guest as the spotlight for that weekend on the Cutting Edge Countdown. And so kind of circles back to back. And if it's a guest that works, I will also run pieces of that on the morning show on WAPL.
So that's why a lot of irons in the fire, keeping all that stuff straight.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be much sometimes. Like I said, Google Calendar, man.
The RockCast and the Cutting Edge Countdown,
Mm-hmm.
do you ever want to throw in the towel on that stuff? Like,
Sometimes.
what motivates
Not
you?
gonna
What motivates you to keep going? That's a lot of work.
Yeah, and there's no money in it either. It's pure passion play. I own both those brands, and it's just something that I guess I'd almost have to. I used to host a classic metal show called Hangar 19, and that dates back, about 15 years at this point. And I hosted that show, and it gave me the bug to want to do. That was my dream, always. Listening to APL as a teenager, it was Lou Brutus and Hard Drive. That was the show that I tuned into. Like, I couldn't miss it. And I'm like, that's what I want to do, man. I want to do a 2-hour, really focus on something radio show. Like, that's it. That's what I want to do. And I want that to be on everywhere. not because I want to be a celebrity, but just because it just was so cool to be able to hear that new music, and not just the new music, but the interviews that went with it, the quick conversations that Lou would have. And I've come to become friends with Lou Brutus over the years, but he is truly an inspiration. He was truly a motivator. I don't want to say a mentor because I didn't know him like that, but just somebody that was an inspiration, and doing a show like that was always my dream. And I was able to do that with Hangar 19. That unfortunately had to go away. I was on a network, and maybe it's the old punk rocker in me, Andy, but I didn't get along with the owner of the network, and I'll kind of leave it at that. But a couple streaming matches later, and we went our separate ways. And when I started the Cutting Edge Countdown on Razor, I was like, this is an opportunity to do that again. But screw it, I'm doing it on my own. So I did all the things that went with it. We started the podcast because that made sense. What do you call a long form interview podcast? It's always about rock music. Okay, RockCast instead of podcast. Whatever. Maybe it's a lame name, but it worked, and here we are. These are 10 years later almost. So the two in my head went together, and so that's what we did. And here we are again all these years. The Cutting Edge Countdown's on 12 radio stations. Not enough, but definitely a good thing, and I'm doing it on my own. So like you said, it's outside of Woodward Community Media a little bit, but also because I work for Woodward Community Media, they help me a lot, and I wouldn't be able to do what I do without them, without the company being supportive of me and those dreams, and kind of what I do with that. And it helps them too. I mean, it originates from Razor. That's the flagship station for the show, and we host Cutter's RockCast through the Woodward Podcast Network. We host the Cutting Edge Countdown. CuttingEdgeCountdown.com is actually just part of RazorWisconsin.com, and so on and so forth.
I remember Hangar 19, and then I remember an episode he did with Sebastian Bach.
It's a video on YouTube that's gotten tens of thousands of views at this point. But because he just starts with Hangar 19. Is Dave Mustaine going to sue you for this? Yeah. Uh-huh.
What are some of the more fun interviews you've had? Does it come down to the conversation or the artist?
Probably the artist. I don't like question answers. I like talking, and because I'm a musician, I tend to nerd out on music stuff, right? Which maybe that's interesting for people, maybe it's not, and I don't know if I care. That's what I enjoy, and hopefully people find that entertaining, and if not, they don't. But what I have noticed is musicians catch on to that. And I didn't mean for that to happen. I didn't mean for that to be a thing. I'm not saying I'm better than anybody else. I think there are some amazing interviewers out there for all walks of life who are a million times better than I ever wish I could be. But I think that adds a little personality or a little personal touch to it. So, if I have an example, recently I had a guy by the name of Des Rocks on. Now, Des Rocks, sort of that sound we were talking about, right? It has that classic rock sound. He toured with Rolling Stones. I mean, he's a New York guy, but he's a modern guitar god. Yeah, or could be if he was more popular. He's that good. He really is that good. And I have all the respect for him as a guitar player in the world. Like, there's no way I could do the things that he does. And he's a good singer and a good frontman as well. But we're doing the RockCast, and I do it in my basement. And behind me is a bookshelf with things on it, and also my orange amp. And I have my guitars on a stand. Not necessarily a little for aesthetic, but also because it's really close, and I can just turn back and grab a guitar, when I want to play, and everything's lined in. So he saw all those and saw the amp, and he's like, "Oh man, that orange amp, that's a good one." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I found it." So we ended up in a conversation for a couple minutes about how I found that head and how much I love that. It's sitting on top of the Marshall cabinet, and whatever. And we ended up talking about things. And I go, "Well, what's your setup like?" And he gives me a tour of his little studio and the equipment that he uses and all of that. Now we're into it. Now there's a personal connection. Now we can talk about anything. And that's been really cool doing Cutter's RockCast, is being able to find those personal connections with rock stars.
Is there a sweet spot as far as length on something like that?
20 minutes is generally what I go for. Sometimes a little shorter, sometimes a little longer, but 20 minutes is generally, I think any more than that, aren't we bored? Like, no offense to Joe Rogan, but I'm not listening to you talk for 3 hours, dude. I'm just not. Thank you for the 20-minute quick hits that you post with somebody that might be interesting to me, but I'm not listening to you talk for 3 hours. I don't have that kind of time, And I know people do, and that's fine. But, and I know I do a 4-hour morning radio show. I get it. But I don't, but for one specific interview or one specific thing, I think 20 minutes is long enough, 15 even.
What's your opinion on social media as far as the quick hits, like you mentioned, as far as these reels and everything else that everybody is posting nowadays? Like, it's really hard to keep up with that stuff.
Trying to figure out how to use it to my advantage, I think, is how I feel about it. I don't know that I have an opinion one way or the other. I think that we are way too plugged in as a society, and that every day goes by, it's like the 90s sound way cooler again. I want to go back to, my wife and I have been talking about that. She's obsessed. She wants to get a TV with a VCR in it. Remember the old, and go back to VHS tapes. And I'm like, can we at least settle on DVDs though? Because I lived in that era of VHS, and I'm good. The DVD, I'd be awesome to have all the DVDs again. But I think we need to put the phones down for sure. It's a little much. It is a little much. And there are certain societies, look at a place like Seoul, North Korea or South Korea, where everybody's just on it the whole time. You don't clap, you just get the light from the phone. That's a little much, and maybe that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but I think it's cool. I think it's fun. I will sit and watch reels. I will sit and watch some TikTok here and there, but within reason.
We had a comment from Eric Herm.
What's up, Eric?
He said Des Rocks is amazing. He needs to be more well known. So that's
agreed, dude. Seriously, do you play video games at all? Anybody gamers here? Okay, yeah, no. There's a video game called Borderlands 4. It's the new Borderlands game. There was a movie based on Borderlands that was horrible, but Borderlands 4 just came out earlier this year. There's a song called This Land. It's by Des Rocks, and it's the theme for that video game. So hopefully that helps,
It's like, and if this was the 90s, it would be a lot easier for people to make that connection because there wasn't so much noise. Like if Des Rocks was in a video game and you heard that song, you would know about it. Now it's just one of 100 things flying over your head.
I found so many of my favorite bands on video games. It feels like do you remember Madden back in the day? That's how I found Avenged Sevenfold, and I have a tattoo of them on my arm. They've become one of my absolute favorite bands, and it was because of a Madden video game. Bullet for My Valentine was on that as well. That's another one, and then some of the rock stuff. It was cool finding. However you find your favorite bands is how you find them. That's awesome. I don't care if it's on Spotify, it's Code Zero Radio, it's WAPL, it's Razor, it's whatever, a myriad of a million rock stations in this country. However you find it, enjoy it, love it. But yeah, like you said, there was less noise, so it was easier to put that together.
Do you remember was it Rock Shop?
I don't.
Metal Blade. I don't remember.
Oh, are you talking about Metal Shop?
Yeah, Metal Shop.
Metal Shop. Charlie Kendall? Chuck Kendall? Something like that.
I used to record that on cassette and then, listen to it as much as I could. And then the next day, listen to the cassette again. And just found out about bands like Rat and stuff like that back then.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, those shows, I guess that's kind of like old time radio when you see the old, pictures of kids sitting around an old time radio. It's still probably kind of like that a little bit, but I feel like more of that is probably people at work.
Yeah, maybe. But it's become a very personal thing. It's not something that's shared with the people around you as much. We're lucky in APL being that we're kind of the radio station people turn on at the shop or at the factory. So it's not like a lot of people who work aren't going to hear other things than that because that's just what's on. But that doesn't happen as much anymore. It used to be, at the desk, somebody had a radio and that's just what you heard because you weren't listening to it on earbuds on your phone or through your computer. So it was a little bit more social. I think that's a great point.
Well, you've been bringing in local artists in the morning for interview segments.
Mm-hmm.
I know Model Music, you brought back the WAPL Garage.
Hell yeah.
Are you still champion to get a lot of these local bands on onto WAPL.
Yeah, in fact, I would love to do more of it.
I know John's got homebrewed.
Yeah, so on WAPL, again, we're a Northeast Wisconsin radio station through and through, right? So that's always been our focus and will always be our focus. But one thing that we did back in the day on Razor when we first launched, because my first job there was the local show. That's the thing. When I started on radio, it was to do the local show. I mean, I did overnights on APL to start, but I quickly took over not home brewed. It was called homegrown then, because I was a local musician. And I moved it to Razor. It was called the Local Edge, and where we played the hell out of Pudge. It's true, actually. But one thing we did, and you may remember this, is all those local shows at Ryan's Ballroom.
Oh, yeah.
And various other places, but specifically Ryan's was the kind of the home away from home.
You were booking
the Thursday night
bands,
shows.
right?
Yeah, I'd book Thursday nights there. It'd always be, two local bands. It's called Local Edge Night. And if nobody else showed up, then my band would play, because if I couldn't find another band to play, I just I have one. We'll just play,
Was that a band with JD at the time?
No, that was a band called LD50. And it was 3 other guys that don't exist in the local music community anymore. 3 amazing human beings who I still love dearly. They're just not in music anymore. But yeah, that was my band. But we would book, as many local bands as humanly possible. Sometimes national bands that were just coming through. But we did the thing that we were able to do on Razor was take the local music scene and allow it to promote the radio station for us. Not on purpose necessarily. It's just how that happened. There were so many good local bands at the time, just like there is right now, that we would play on air, bands like Profane, my own band, Simple Machine. I'm trying to think of other bands back then. White Van was another one. 5 Man. The list goes on of these bands that we would play on Razor, and there in turn, those bands would be like, "Hey, listen to our song on Razor." So it would promote the radio station for us. It was awesome. Well, I remember all that. And I'm like, but it was also fun. It was great for the scene. It was good for the radio station, but it was better for the local music scene. So let's do that again on APL, or on the morning show specifically. So, I'm going to have a friend. And I don't care if you're in a cover band. I don't care if you're in an original music band. If you play music in Northeast Wisconsin, I probably want to have you on my morning show, do a song or 2 acoustic, tell us who you are, and let's spotlight that again. And that's something I'm going to focus on this year, because I think we got away from it last year with some of the changes and things, and it was just a little bit harder to book, but definitely something that Laura and I have been talking about doing more of.
You've taken the stage with a lot of bands in the area. I know the glam band, you hit the stage with them. Do you like doing things like that? And
unofficial 4th guitar player? I say 4th because, there's always somebody in the middle. I love doing that. I do. It gives me an opportunity to still play.
You recently got together with Nick Rodello. You mentioned 5 Man, and that just clicked.
Oh, yeah.
You got together with Nick and Armstrong.
Yeah,
right?
Rick Armstrong.
Yep.
Yeah, guys, when are we jamming next?
How did that
Holidays
go?
hit,
How did the jam session go, by the
It
way?
went great.
Good.
It went great. We wrote 3 songs. I don't know. We were going to do covers, and then we on writing a bunch of stuff. It was just get together and jam with some friends, But I love doing that. I absolutely love doing it. The thing with, you mentioned JD, my friend JD, best friend in the world. He used to be in a band called Surreal. Back in the day, he was in Fahrenheit 420, Reset to Zero, if you go way back. Him and I started jamming together during the pandemic, and we became friends years before that. We ended up both going through divorces at the same time, being single dads, and that just but we were also both guitar players in local bands. So we ended up just becoming really close friends. And when the pandemic hit, both of our bands, I was in a band called Hot Carl at the time. He was in Surreal. Both of our bands sort of just went on pause because of the pandemic. Mine ended up breaking up officially, and then same with his, kind of. Although they still get together here and there. We started just jamming. He put together this one-man show thing, and I went, well, if you need a backup, I'm not doing anything either. I'll come with my acoustic. So you had to do the 6 feet apart, all that. So we go play in these bars that just didn't care that the pandemic existed. and your opinions are your opinions on that. I'm not going to get into it. But there were certain places we'd put a table in front of us just to make sure, they're 6 feet apart. But whatever, we would just do that. It would just be him and I, and then our friend Devin would play drums, but not drums. We called it an octopad, and it was literally just a drum pad with a bass drum attached to it. And he would do that, and we'd set up real small in these places, and we did that for a while until it turned into a full band, but it was a jam band. We never knew what we're going to. JD controlled it. He was the lead singer, and for the most part, lead guitar player. And he would just call out songs, and we'd play it. Sometimes we learned them on the fly, and it was a lot of fun doing that.
It's a good way as well to get back into it as far as being spontaneous and learning your way around a fretboard again, especially if you've been away from it.
It made me a million times better guitar player. A million times better guitar player, And I was able to, because it was dumb and we were playing in bars, pull out some old guitar tricks that I hadn't thought about in forever. Like I would play, a tapping guitar solo with a drumstick, or on an acoustic. Like, why not? And things like that. So it would be, it could be kind of fun. Pull out some Tom Morello things and just be like, hey, does that work? Oh yeah, it's scratch on my strings, just because it was dumb fun. And yeah, and like you said, it made me a million times better guitar player than I would have been if I didn't do that.
Are there any bands currently on the local scene that have blown you away?
Yeah, but you're putting me on the spot.
You don't have to answer. I know that's kind of to drop that question on somebody, you kind of have to start going through the thought process.
I am going through the thought process because there are some bands that are absolutely really good. But yeah, to put it on the spot, I mean, there are bands like Trash Pandas, and I know they're on tour right now. It's punk rock, and I love punk rock, so it's that always hits a special place in my heart. Obviously, we had them in the garage for APL in the morning show last year. Not this past year, but the year before that. Traveling Suitcase is always really good. I mean, there's a band called Tuck that's actually really good. I don't know if you've heard of them. Yeah. There's a band that just opened up for Nonpoint on Saturday or on New Year's Eve at Epic Event Center. That's Kurt from Profane's new band. They're really good. If you like metal, we're blessed in Northeast Wisconsin to have some really amazing bands actually. And now we have places for them to play, which is cool. Because when you and I were first playing in bands when we were, 20 years old? We didn't have that. We didn't have places to go play. We had Ryan's if we were lucky,
and that was like one of the prime spots.
Right,
like
exactly.
An actual stage.
Yeah, an actual stage with an actual PA.
Yeah, PAs seem more prevalent nowadays too than they used to be.
Than they used to be.
You did mention on your social media you went out to the Epic. Was that New Year's Eve?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, your wife is in media. She, works in news.
She does, yeah. Channel 2.
When do you spend time together? It's got to be.
Well, we kind of have the same schedule. She does the morning show on Channel 2, so shout out to Action 2 News, WBAY. She does what's called the safety desk. She's the anchor for that, and then also does traffic on the morning show. But her main thing is the safety desk. That's kind of her passion, as far as because she gets to be a reporter still, and that's journalism. She went to Walter Cronkite School for Journalism in Phoenix. She graduated high honors. She's one of the smartest people I've ever met in my life, and I'm not saying that because I'm married to her and I don't want to get my ass kicked when I go home. I'm saying that because it's the absolute truth. She really is. I don't know how I got that lucky, but I did. She's an incredible human being.
She enjoys concerts, right?
Yeah. Well, so it's funny on set. She's Latin, and listening to rock music wasn't necessarily a thing in her household, when she was growing up. For me, my brothers listened to Boston and Def Leppard and, Metallica and Prince and Billy Joel and, all those things. My sisters listened to all the pop music and from the 80s and early 90s. And so I had that. She didn't. It was a lot of, old school Latin music or Puerto Rican singers or, whatever. And then being in Arizona, a lot of that scene. So the rock stuff was more ska, it was maybe Rancid, but definitely Sublime. And, and she loves reggae. So they're Nonpoint, who played on New Year's Eve at Epic, are a band where the drummer is Puerto Rican and the lead singer is half Puerto Rican. So there's that rhythmic vibe to them. I've always loved that about that band. And they've they'd become close friends over the years with all those shows we did together on Razor. And a band that opened for them, called Aurora Wave, is this band that my wife found randomly. I think it was an Instagram reel, if I'm being honest with you. And it was like, hey, do you love reggae, but also metal? Because that's what they are. They call themselves reggae core, and it's this reggae band with these metal riffs in the middle and breakdowns. It's and like modern. I'm not talking like old school metal. I'm talking like modern, breakdown, like slow, like stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, ding, 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 and they're really good, but they're really good and really highly entertaining. She loves this band. So when this concert came around, Aurora Wave was going on tour at Nonpoint for this quick like New Year's Eve or New Year's thing. They did 4 shows in the Midwest specifically, and ended in Green Bay. It was like this was her night to see one of her favorite bands. So it was cool. It was a cool moment, and we went and met the band, and they'll be on the RockCast and Countdown soon. I'm gonna reach out to the lead singer this week and get that booked. But yeah.
So you're influencing each other
a little bit,
somewhat
yeah.
on music.
But shouldn't you? Like, if that's your partner, you know what I mean? Shouldn't you influence each other? Not just music, but with everything in life?
Yeah, you don't want to spend the rest of your life going to shows separately and not sharing a passion.
Well, right. And not just shows, but anything, for that matter.
Well, she also has logged hundreds and hundreds of miles with you on the bike. Right?
Yeah.
That's another one of your passions is motorcycles.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of grew up on 2 wheels a little bit. Like I had a dirt bike, I grew up in the country, and I had a dirt bike. My brother had a dirt bike. And well, he had a dirt bike, which means I had a dirt bike, basically. He had to go away for certain things. So I inherited it. But so I just 2 wheels, man. The bicycle, whether it was a 10-speed or a BMX or something with a motor on it, I love 2 wheels. I don't know what it is. But I got away from it for a little while, and I kind of fell in love with motorcycles about, 15, 20 years ago. And it just grows by the day at this point, and luckily she's become a huge fan of it too, because otherwise that wouldn't have worked, but I love, outside of music, motorcycles. I love riding my bike. I love seeing the countryside on a motorcycle. It's something, it's just different. It's different and it's cool, and it's an opportunity I don't have music on my bike. Sometimes if I have to go the highway for a long distance, I'll throw some earbuds in the helmet, but otherwise it's just you and the wind and the road, and that's it. And it's an opportunity to just really kind of get in touch with your thoughts and what's going on in the world, and forcefully. It's forced meditation almost, but you have to focus so hard on what's going on around you, to not, obviously to be safe, that it's just this sort of forced focus thing that really helps open your brain up. And I don't know, it's just really hard to explain. If you don't know it, it's hard to explain. If you know it, then you know exactly what I'm talking about.
I've got that feeling when I shop the bins at the Goodwill outlet store.
See what I'm saying? St. Vinny's, baby. Let's go.
Who's the big wish list guest for you? 1 or 2 people that you want to get badly.
I mean, there are obvious ones like Metallica. That's
full band. If you had to just pick one.
Well, I've interviewed Robert Trujillo in the past, and I've interviewed Kirk Hammett in the past. But like Lars or James would be
you want 2
amazing.
of the founding members.
That would be big. Other than that, I don't know. Tony Iommi from Black Sabbath would be cool. I was supposed to interview him twice. I've actually had him booked, and it didn't work out. Just because this is the guy that started heavy metal. You know what I mean? The music exists the way it exists because that band existed. And Ozzy, God rest his soul, but it was Iommi. Iommi started that. Iommi came up with that tone. Iommi, that guitar, dropping the guitar tuning, to what that is, to make it sound like that. Just think about what people must have thought in 1969 or 1970 when you heard the song Black Sabbath for the first time, or Iron Man even. Or anything off that first album, The Wizard, whatever. And like, what the hell? Satan has been reincarnated in my living room. What is happening? Because it's just how crazy and heavy, which sounds ridiculous now. You hear it and it's like, well, that's not heavy at all. That's just standard. Like my mom and dad listened to that. But back then, 50 years ago, You know, that's what I would love to talk to him about. But he's a hard get, and even harder now. So I don't think it'll ever happen. But
Well, the fact you got close twice.
got close twice. He did a solo record that he was promoting way back in the day, and I tried to have him on for that, and then it didn't work out. And then I was going to have him on he was reissuing Black Sabbath stuff, and this is when I was doing the metal show yet, and I was going to have him on for that, and it didn't work out. So it is what it is.
So where can people go? You mentioned earlier, but where can people go to find the RockCast, and where can people go to find out all these interviews you're doing, stuff that Cutter Media is putting together?
Well, it's at Cutter Media on social media first and foremost. At Cutter Media, that's anywhere. And YouTube, This Is Cutter Media. But again, if you search it, you'll find it. And then Cutter's RockCast as an audio podcast is available anywhere you can get podcasts from. So any streaming networks, from Spotify and Apple and Amazon, iHeart even, which is technically competition, but they're on there because they own a podcast thing. So there it is, Stitcher.
It's important to say people should subscribe to these as well. Just don't go watch an episode, but subscribe so that it doesn't fall away.
One of my goals in 2026 is to consistently do more videos, both TikTok and reel length, but also obviously the full conversation will always be found on my YouTube. But it's way easy to find all that stuff at cuttingedgecountdown.com. So cuttingedgecountdown.com. Obviously, that's the radio show, but that's where you can find that. And then for the morning show, kind of same deal, but it's WAPL.com, Literally and Cutter, or just look for Literally and Cutter anywhere.
5 a.m. to 9 a.m. Monday through Friday.
5 a.m. to 9 a.m. Monday through Friday and various times thereafter.
Cutter, I want to thank you for coming in here. Obviously, you've been an inspiration and part of my musical life. Background soundtrack. I appreciate you spending some time with me today. Happy New Year, and look forward to seeing and hearing what you have coming out.
Hey, good on you to have this Code Zero Radio, man. It's a good opportunity for people to hear local music. That's awesome.
Thank you for watching Fox Cities Core on Code Zero Radio. You know the drill. If you haven't already, if you could find us on YouTube, search for Fox Cities Core. You'll be able to go through and watch some of the interviews we've done over the last 5 years. Please subscribe so you don't miss out on future interviews. Be sure to check out and support all of the great resources we have here in the Fox Cities. This really is the greatest music community.
Lost track of time.